Hello, I'm Christina Flach, and today on I'm Too Busy, I am joined by an extraordinary guest, Greg Sarris. He's an acclaimed author, tribal chairman, businessman, and visionary leader. We'll talk about his powerful new novel, The Last Human Bear, which is inspired by Native California history, identity, and the legends that shaped his community. Greg also shares his remarkable journey of restoring federal recognition to his tribe and transforming opportunity for future generations through leadership, perseverance, and vision. And finally, we'll discuss what it means to build a lasting legacy as Greg prepares to step down after 34 years as tribal chairman and return to his other passion, writing. This is a conversation about storytelling, resilience, leadership, and the enduring power of knowing where you came from. I hope you love this interview as much as I do. Please like, subscribe, share, and comment.
After 28 years between novels, what finally made this story break the silence?
Well, I've done I think 3 books in addition that I've published in those 28 years. They're smaller. They're not novels. They're 2 collections of stories and a collection of essays. So I wasn't like not writing, but
Right.
I actually wrote this big novel during that time, early on, about 10 years ago. And it's got an interesting story, Christina, because it was at a time when I had another contract with another publishing house. I lost my editor there, and it was a time when my mother had passed away and things were really bad. And I just thought, oh, I've had it. And by the way, at that time, speaking of being too busy, I was, working on the early days of the casino resort with my tribe. And I just kind of let it go. And it was a bad memory. And a very good friend of mine said, whatever happened to that novel you were working on? And I said, oh, I don't want to think about it. And this was a couple of years, about a year and a half ago. And then she said, you better. And I just had one copy of it. And it was down in a bungalow on my property where
my gosh.
A fire came within a half a mile of that bungalow.
Oh my gosh.
And that manuscript would have burned. And when we went back to the publisher to get back the rights, they couldn't find it. So there was one copy left.
Oh my
luckily,
God.
yes. And so working from that copy, we edited it down. It was a little long. I have a tendency to overwrite. And as we say, the bear finally came out of her cave, and she's out in the world. So I was doing lots of other things. I was obviously for my tribe. I'm not just chairman of the tribe, but I'm president of the business board. So I oversee the daily operations of the tribe as well as the big, huge business. And so I was doing that. I was also teaching full time at the university, and I was serving on the Smithsonian board, and got on the UC Regents board. So I was trying to write while I was doing all of these things.
How did you find the time?
I guess I'm crazy.
No, you're not at all. I love this. I love the energy.
Well, if you have a passion for something, you'll find the time. And as I always say to people who I work with who are late getting me things, well, not the first time they're late, but the second and third and fourth and fifth time they're late, when they say, when they make excuses, I always say the only excuse for not doing something is that you didn't do it. So let's just stop there.
Yeah, I agree.
Yeah.
I completely agree.
I've been able to, I guess, budget my time. Sometimes it's a little difficult, but I do, and I don't sleep enough probably, and I drink too much coffee probably.
Which is, against all the things we've talked about.
Yes, but
I need you to sleep more and drink more water or more self-care.
I'm drinking water.
Thank you.
I knew you would bring this up, Christina, and your maternal instincts would. I have this guilt mom thing, and you bring.
And I contribute to that.
Yeah.
So Mary spends much of her life trying to outrun her past. Do you think people in general spend their lives escaping who they are before they fully embrace it?
Yeah, I think I really, Christina, I really do think that people, we remember certain things from our past and try to deny and forget other things. If you were an unpopular kid in grammar school and people were mean to you and you've had ambitions later on, you don't want to remember your failures or your illegitimacies or your the ways in which you were seen as a failure. And I think that most of us kind of work to reinvent ourselves, even with our own confidence or whatever. We fight against, in order to succeed in this world, we have to find ways um, to negotiate everything we see so that we can survive, basically. And Mary's instinct is a survival instinct. I mean, she's got all the odds are stacked against her. She's a woman, she's an American Indian, she's poor. And and also she's haunted by this tradition of her stepmother being a human bearer and a Indian kind of witch, if you will. And people are scared. And Mary is she has to negotiate all those things in the 1940s, late 30s, 40s, 50s, in a culture, a society that was very racist for one thing and classist for another. And she negotiates this. I love it because this character, because she's rich and she's complex and she wants to survive and she'll do some unscrupulous things too. I mean, she's no angel and she can be uh, she's complicated like all of us. So I think in trying to work her way um, to put a roof over her head and survive on her terms and have agency, she figures out how to disguise herself, how to do different things, how to tell stories, and sometimes just be flat out brutal. And she's got a vicious mouth and can have a vicious mouth. So, but she comes to learn, and I'm not giving anything away, as all of us do if we live long enough, Christina. If we live long enough, we learn that a lot of times our insecurities motivate behaviors that actually work against us. And I think that Mary comes to understand that at the end of her life. There's a man who she gets jilted early on by one guy. He kind of dumps her. And then when a wonderful guy who truly does love her comes along, she's so suspicious and damaged that she can't totally trust that. And she learns at the end of her life that she should have.
Mary's story couldn't have been told in a single decade. And what does time itself do for a character that's fighting a fighter narrative can't?
Well, it's interesting and wonderful question, Christina, because again, if we live long enough, we can kind of reflect not only on the things that where we succeed, but more importantly, at least for me as a human being, is to reflect on the mistakes you've made and the people you've hurt in the process. You look back and you think, oh, I shouldn't have done that, or I shouldn't have handled that differently, or I shouldn't have wasted so much time on that. And if you live long enough and move through decades, and also times change, of course, but it gives you the opportunity to reflect. It gives, life's kind of like a cycle. The American Indian woman who was such an influence in my life, Mabel McKay, she told me once, she said, I was like 27, 28 years old. And she said, do you know how babies are born? And I said, yeah, I kind of figured it out. And she said, no, you're being stupid. You don't know what I'm saying. And I said, well, okay, how are babies born? And she said, the spirit follows the parents for about 2 years before it's born. And it sees its whole life story. It sees everything it's going to do. And then what I would say, these weren't her words, but when you're born and then with the acquisition of motor skills and language, the mirror that shows you your whole life ahead falls apart. All the pieces of that glass fall apart. And then she said, if you live long enough, you can put all those pieces back together.
How
And
interesting.
yeah, and uh, she said to me, "Okay, so what's that? What do you call that in between your birth and when, if you're lucky enough to live long enough to put the mirror back together?" And at this point, already having been stupid, I
Right.
I didn't want to try to answer, right? And I said, "I don't know, what is it?" And she goes, "That's what you call living."
That's what I was gonna say
Yeah,
life, but yes.
life. Yeah. So, uh, and the songwriter Joni Mitchell said years ago during our hippie days, life is for learning, and that's it.
That's very true.
And some of the best stories are human stories, where even as we're reading about Mary, I remember a person I really respect, a writer. She said, "Oh my God, I thought a lot of times I was reading about myself. I did things like that." And it's kind of, she didn't do the exact kind of things, but her thinking was the same, and her kind of feeling sometimes of vengeance. So she goes, "I felt so embarrassed." She goes, "I felt bad about the things I've done." I said, "Well, that's a good thing a book can do, I guess, make you reflect on your own life."
Right. Where did this character come from? What inspired this story?
Really a good question. Well, as a kid, a lot of writers will tell you, Christina, that they read, they were constant readers. I didn't read a book till 11th grade. And I remember it was Ernest Hemingway's Old Man and the Sea. And I remember feeling sorry for the fish, kind of, inauspicious beginnings for an English professor and a
Right.
writer. But I always heard stories, and I heard the old people gossiping and telling stories. And one of the women that a lot of my aunts and the older people always talked about was this woman who was reputed to be a human bear and poison people and do things. And they always said, "Stay away from her. Stay away from her. She's dangerous. She's no good." And of course, as a writer or somebody who's curious, as a teenager, when your parents said, "Don't do this," you were instantly curious, like,
Right.
"Okay, I want to see what this is," right? So, of course, I never got to meet the woman, but I heard all these stories and they were fascinating to me,
Right.
about the things that she did. She also was reputed, I should just say, and Mary doesn't quite take it this far, but she was reputed at the age of 60 and 65 to be teaching 20-year-old men all about life and so forth. Of course, and as I think today, my God, Cher and Madonna have nothing on her.
Right.
But, right. But she had been a beautiful woman, this woman who is, and Mary's a beautiful woman physically, in many ways. Um, so that woman who I never knew, never personally met, I saw her from a distance,
Hmm.
always stayed in the back of my mind, and I was always curious, like, what would this life be like? What was her life like? And so I fictionalized her, got into her head fictionally, and created this character out of those stories.
Isn't it remarkable that this woman whom you never met, never spoke with, made such an incredible impact on your life? And don't you find that extraordinary?
And yes, what's most extraordinary, Christina, is that she wasn't supposed to. I was
Exactly.
I wasn't supposed to pay her any attention or anything. And here she's launching this or relaunching my literary career
Right.
in major ways. And it's almost like maybe I got tricked by her or by her story. And just as she's tricking the reader, playing the reader gets involved. You start reading her. So many readers have said you start reading and you just keep going because she kind of draws you in. And maybe she haunted me. I don't know.
Maybe. Have you met any of her relatives? Did she have
I know
children?
some of the relatives. I know some of them. Some of them are in my tribe, distant relatives. And of course, with my previous books, a lot of my relatives, well, my first book, Grand Avenue, which we turned into an HBO miniseries, Robert Redford executive produced it. Um, they were all going to sue me when the book came out because I was writing about them. Of course, they'd have to end up suing each other because many different relatives were claiming the one character was them. But once the movie came out, the miniseries, they understood the concept of representation. It's about us, but not literally us.
Exactly,
Uh,
exactly.
so so I'm a little worried about again. So I named some actual names of people and places here, and I'm sure my folks will speculate. They'll probably know who this might be about. But I fictionalized enough of the life that I don't think they could pin it. But uh, yeah, I do. Sometimes I do worry that what they'll say, and then they'll think maybe I'm a bear person and could poison them. I don't know. Who knows? I don't know.
No,
Yeah.
I think you've done it in a very graceful, tasteful way, and I think it's beautifully written. How much of Mary's struggle with identity reflects larger Native American experiences in California?
Really, again, a wonderful question,
Oh,
Christina. Right
thank
on the
you.
money. For me personally, because I've always had an issue. Everything we know about Indians is Plains Indians, starting with a Buffalo Bill, and then the Westerns, where the Indians are always on horses chasing buffaloes, and Plains Indians. When in fact, in California, there were more Indians, in particularly Central California, than anywhere else in the entire New World outside of the present site of Mexico City.
Wow.
And all the language families found in the New World have a representative in California. There were all these a lot of people very densely populated here, small tribes, small nations, but many, many of them. And there's still many. There's, I think, almost 110 federally recognized tribes in California, and many others trying
Wow.
to gain federal recognition. But I've always had a chip on my shoulder because I always felt like, um, you know, nobody knew there were Indians in California until there were casinos. and 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 people didn't know about Indians west of the Rockies. I remember as a kid, it was kind of discouraging. I was very young, but when we went out to when they claimed Alcatraz, when the American
Mm,
Indian movement stepped on
right.
Alcatraz, claiming that land for all Indian people, and here it was on our Ohlone territory and we went out there and they thought we were kind of Mexicans and they were mostly Plains Indians or Indians from the Northeast. And yeah, it was really kind of hard to hear the irony that even Indians didn't know or couldn't think that whose land is this. So I've always had that kind of chip on my shoulder. And I remember when I was first writing a lot of these stories as in the writing program at Stanford, the professor said to me, "Who are these people? Um, you're never going to be able to publish any of these stories because they were urban Indians, they were mixed blood with the identity thing."
Hmm.
And he didn't. He said, yeah, of course, in those days they wanted you to write the minimalist story where Sally goes to Martha's vineyard one summer and has an epiphany and decides to part her hair on the other side of her head. I didn't know from people like that, right?
Right,
But
right.
in any event, I kept writing. Here in California, because of the huge genocide, Washington didn't even see what was happening west of the Rockies, particularly after the discovery of gold, there was the federally financed vigilante groups that just killed us in droves. In my tribe, we're comprised of Coast Miwok from Marin County and Pomo from southern Sonoma County. And at the time of European contact, there were a conservative estimate about 20,000 of us. Today, the 1,557 enrolled members, we all trace our ancestry back to one of 14 survivors, all of whom were
Wow.
women, all of whom were wives or concubines of the early Americans.
Wow.
So you can see the mixed bloodedness, and some of us come out looking more today, more like Indians. We're mixed with Mexican, Filipino. My mother was Jewish, so we're were mixed, and my father himself was mixed. So you're struggling. I think California Indians have always, to some extent, struggled with their identity. And I have personally, because first of all, I was adopted by a non-Indian family. There were stories out there that I wasn't an Indian, and they said that, he was adopted by Indians. No, I was adopted by non-Indians. I was adopted by
Right.
a white family, right?
I'd love to get into that part of your story as well.
Yeah, well, we
I don't know if you want to
could.
do that now, but we
Yeah,
could finish I
but
want to talk about the book, but because that whole
yeah.
story is
Well, yeah,
amazing.
my father, my mother was young. She was Jewish, principally Jewish. Her father was Howard Hartman, and he worked for the May Company in Los Angeles. And of course, in the 50s, when I was born, early 50s, nice Jewish girls didn't get pregnant, and certainly not by dark men. And she was just 16, and they put me up for adoption. And I was born in Santa Rosa Memorial Hospital there. And 2 days after my mother had me, before they were going to release her, ironically on Valentine's Day, um, they wanted to give her a little blood. I guess she was weak. She was young. I mean, a small, and they gave her the wrong type blood, uh, and it killed her. And her
So
mother
sad.
secretly buried her in the pauper section of a Catholic cemetery. And the baby was already put up for adoption. And my adopted family, typical Christina, you
Hmm.
know, they've been trying to have a kid for 7 years. And of course, the minute they arranged for the adoption, and by the time they got me home, they were 2 months pregnant with their own.
I
So
have
I
heard
was
that happening so many times. I
so
wonder
many
what that
times.
is, right?
I don't know. It's because you want to say, well, it makes people relax. Well, but the DNA doesn't change. I don't get
Right.
it.
Nothing changed.
So, but it is. I've heard that story. When I tell this story, so many people say, "Oh yeah, I've heard that." So I tell all my friends that are doing all this fertility drugs and all this stuff, just adopt. You'll get pregnant right
You'll get
away.
pregnant in 5 seconds.
Yes. So yeah, and then it was a long process till I found my family. On my birth certificate, the original birth, they do for adopted children. I don't know if you know, they do a fake kind of birth certificate where they have your adopted parents as the real parents, but then
Mm.
they have an original birth certificate, which is the actual birth certificate.
How did you
And
find that?
I had to dig in the records and go to Sacramento, California, and
What gave you even what made you do that?
well, part of it was the family that I was adopted into. They were the father was not good, I should say, and they ended up having two more, so they had three of their own, and they
Hmm.
were very blonde and very different from me. And
Hmm.
I guess I always wondered who I was. And my adopted father, also used some racist, unfortunate terms on me as a kid. And
Awful.
that was probably from what it said on the original birth certificate, which in those days they used to put the race of the parents, and for mine it basically said father unknown and non-white, and then it had a narrative about likely Mexican. But in those days,
Mm.
anybody that was brown here in California, or today for that matter, unfortunately, anybody who's brown is considered Mexican. And he had a Spanish name. My father had a Spanish name. So, as many Indian people here did, because remember, we were colonized first by the Spanish, the missions, and then the Mexican period. So, and since then, many of us have intermarried with Mexican people and others. So, anyway, I always thought growing up, because my mother just told me and what I was, I always thought, well, she said I was Mexican and German, or Spanish and German. People used to even be ashamed to say you were Mexican, say you're
Right.
Spanish. But supposedly I was Spanish and German when, you know, and I didn't know. So I grew up and I always thought I was Mexican. And but then ended up being around a lot of the Mexican and Indian families. Some of those Indian families turned out to be relatives, and I didn't know it.
Isn't that
In fact,
amazing?
I went out with a girl in ninth grade, And she turns out to be my second or third cousin. So I didn't, of course, I didn't know until I was nearly 30 or 30 that, we were related. But I used to see her and we used to laugh about it. So
That is amazing.
yeah.
So let's dive into a little bit about how you got involved with the tribe and how that's evolved into this amazing, beautiful place of Grayton.
That's another one big interesting question. Um, so while I'm writing and doing all this, well, I was a young professor at UCLA, and the elders in the tribe called me, and we were illegally terminated, Christina, in 1966. They created something called the California Indian Rancheria or Reservation Termination Act, which stipulated that by consensus, Indian people could own the land that was given to them privately, so that they paid taxes and like anybody else. But what it also did was it took away your rights as a sovereign nation and your
Mm,
sovereign status. It was basically an updated version of the Dawes Act, where they were trying to assimilate us. Many of us were Many of us weren't even living on the small 15.5 acres they gave us. But they came one summer, and it was supposed to be again by consensus. They came one summer while most of the folks were out picking pears or doing crops, and there were two older men left on the reservation. And two agents said to them, "Would you like to own your land?" Well, to a couple Indian guys who didn't understand the ramifications of the law or anything, that sounded good. And they said, "Sign here." And we lost everything.
mm.
And again, obviously, it wasn't by consensus. So what happened then is that in 1992, I was just starting teaching at UCLA, and somebody who was a federally recognized tribe was moving into our territory to build a casino. And
Mm.
when you're not federally recognized, Christina, you have no rights. You're, like a Saturday afternoon club. So people could just come in, another tribe could claim your territory or something, which they were doing. And the elders called me at UCLA and said, um, "You're one of us."
How did they
You were.
know though? How did they know that you were one of them?
Oh, I had already been a long time been in contact with them.
Okay, so when you
Relative.
found out,
Oh no, it was way before that.
okay.
It was way years before. So I mean, I knew we all hung out and I knew them, and I had aunties and uncles and everything else, cousins, which I found out, I went out with. But but what happened was that they said, "You have some brains. You're down there, Mr. Professor. Come up and use them and help us." So the other tribe that was federally recognized trying to do a casino had Japanese investors, and they were going to do a huge, big project. And I came and I took on verbally the other chairman of the tribe at the time, and it scared the Japanese investors. They didn't understand we had no rights, but they feared Indian wars and they pulled out.
Oh, wow, interesting.
Yeah. So at that point, we all got together. We got together family albums and stuff, and we said, "Hey, we've been terminated a long time. We are a tribe. Let's fight." So, long story short, I co-authored a bill with California Indian Legal Services. I fought for 8 years to try to get that through Congress. But
Wow.
Christina, it's so interesting. It's no secret that anybody can write a bill. Getting it out of the hopper depends on who you know or how much money you have. I didn't have much either, but I did know one person. And it went on, and then in fall of 2000, as you know, Bush was elected, and President Clinton was going out. And I thought, oh my gosh, this is the end of the road. Bush will come in. It won't be as good a time for Indian policy, probably, as it had been for with Clinton. So I got very frightened then, and I had made the movie, the HBO miniseries with Robert Redford. Now, to this day, and I just spoke with his daughter about this yesterday, I cannot prove that he never made a call or did anything for us. But I did. I was talking to him, and I just told him of the situation. I just
Right.
told him of the situation. And remember, in those days, if Clinton called China, they'd put him on hold. If Redford called, they'd put him through. But uh, so I told Bob about this, and I've never asked him directly to do anything. Just kind of told him about my situation,
Right.
and I never asked him afterwards if he did it or not. I was afraid I just to ask. I didn't want to know. But about a week later, I was driving home from jury duty in December. It was late December, end of December, and I was on Wilshire Boulevard in at traffic, and I got a call that President Clinton signed the bill on December 27th, 2000, 2 weeks before he went out of office, and we were
Wow.
restored as a federally recognized tribe. Whew. So I thought, okay, I did my duty. We
I'm
got
going
our
to go
rights
back to
back.
my life teaching.
Yes, I can go back to teaching and writing and making movies and doing the things I loved. And a couple of years went by, and we got some federal monies, but we had no land. The bill didn't stipulate that the federal government had to give us land. We had rights. We were a sovereign nation, but we were landless. We were a landless nation. So people began to discuss the C word, Christina, which is cancer. It was
Hmm.
casino, and yours truly here had never been in a casino. And I thought, oh, they're very déclassé. It's a very elitist notion. Like, oh, I don't want to get involved with the casino. Eventually, though, I came to understand that the location was incredible because everything with a casino is location, your proximity to an urban area. So I said to the tribal council and to the elders there, I said, I'll help you with this. Um, if we can become a platform, if we can raise, first of all, raise our people up and give our people opportunities, put a roof over folks' heads, insurance policy in our pockets, education opportunities. But I said also be a platform for social justice and environmental stewardship. In other words, a benefit to Indian and non-Indian alike. And perhaps because nobody else was around doing it, I don't know. But they said, okay, yeah, we agree with you, Greg. We'll do that. Well, that'll be our mission and all of that. So, Christina, as I like to say, I didn't go down a rabbit's hole. I fell into the Grand Canyon. And
Truly.
and I went out one summer on a plane, took 35 meetings with banks and others, raised $2.6 billion, got it down to $1 billion, used that to build the casino, paid that back, I think, in 7 or 8 years, very successful. And as you know, as well as anybody else, just borrowed another billion, which didn't have to borrow. In fact, we did $1 billion expansion that we just opened, what, a month ago or so?
Yeah.
And yeah, a little more than a month, and without having to borrow a penny. And that's all the good news. That is indicative of how successful the business has been. But most importantly, we've turned around in the tribe, among other great things, a 60% dropout rate to 100% graduate from high school. We've helped other tribes in the area, of course, greatly. And we have given up to 120 million in charities that have to do with social justice and environmental stewardship. That's just in the last 12 and a half years. And the
Wow.
local governments, the city of Rohnert Park and the county of Sonoma, I think it's $245 million and counting for infrastructure and other things. So we've gotten a lot of land back, made co-management agreements with parks, both local and federal. We've lived up to our mission and done the right thing. So I guess, as Will says, back to literature, all's well that ends well. At the end of this year, I will, after 34 years as tribal chairman, I'm going to step down. I'll stay on the business board and advise and so forth, but I'm going to go back to writing. And this book, this novel, is kind of, I'm hoping that it'll be my ticket really back into the literary world.
Right.
I'll stay involved with my tribe, with my people, of course. I always will be. They're family. I can't get away from them.
That's, that's true. What do you hope non-native readers learn about Mary's journey?
Um, a wonderful question again, Christina. That American Indian people like anyone else, that we are rich, complicated people with complicated lives, negotiating because of our particular histories. We've got certain circumstances that are unique, but at the same time that are universal. And that she is a complicated character, so that you see that as people we're complicated, but you also get to learn a lot about basically a century of California Indian history in this locale, because you're seeing this town and this community through the eyes of this woman. And often in fact, Santa Rosa, McDonald Avenue was what Hollywood used in the 1940s as every town America. They did Shadow of a Doubt there, Pollyanna, and all that. And
Oh, wow, I didn't know that.
yeah, and the town's fathers, you can see all the houses, they're still there. The town's fathers always wanted you to think that, it was a very lily white, perfect community. So you're seeing this community through the eyes of someone who is not lily white, and a woman.
The book explores passing between different worlds and identities. Have you ever felt that tension in your own life?
All the time, because I've either been too light or too dark. People say you don't look Indian, and of course I want to say, well, you don't look rude. What's a, what's a,
That's
what's
such a
an
great
Indian?
line.
Yes. What's an Indian supposed to look like? And so I've always had to negotiate those kinds of things, and always with the feeling of illegitimacy. So one of the problems that we have been historically is we've categorized people by race or whatever, and you're supposed to fit into this tight box where the borders of identity are supposed to be rigid, when in fact the borders of identity are porous. We're moving in and out. We listen to different types of music. We're mixing in so many ways, racially, genetically, every way. And that's America. That's the contemporary world, for that matter, in many ways. And and the danger is, with colonization and trauma, is that we tend to replicate illegitimacy within our own ranks. For instance, when I was young, a lot of people, including my grandmother, would always say they were Mexican or Spanish or something. And then the American Indian movement came along, and I'm too light, march in the back. So notice we're delegitimizing those within our own ranks rather than embracing the complexity that is, in fact, history.
Well, maybe this book will change people's mindset thinking about that. Do the challenges of leading a tribe make you a better writer?
I never thought. Now that's a question I've never gotten. It certainly made me see a lot of my people in different ways, understand my people in different ways, and appreciate my folks and our ability to embrace change for the better, and to be generous and use some of those old values of giving. We're doing well. We have resources, and the majority of the tribe thus far has been, I'm not a dictator. It is a democracy. So the money that we give to charities and so forth, the tribal council representing the entire tribe agrees to do those things. So it's just not Greg, in my agenda. It's wonderful to see the ways in which the tribe can work together for the common good. And that's what I've really come to appreciate.
I love that. Has storytelling helped you become a better leader?
Absolutely. Literature has. And that's what, I used to tell my English majors, being an English major, of course, nobody much wants to read anymore, but reading is the most important thing, because it spurs the imagination. Remember, a book is only half the experience. The reader's the other half.
That's
So,
so true. I've never thought of that, but that really
isn't it?
is.
Yeah, isn't that really the case? And so for me, reading, just like hearing stories when I was young, but reading and being an English major has um, cultivated, grown my ability to imagine, because you're imagining, you're picturing. So as a tribal leader and as a politician, it's enabled me to, when we get into tight corners and so forth, to imagine ways out, to imagine how to deal with this situation, to imagine how to deal with that situation. It gives me, I would say, a lot of creative leverage to deal with problems and situations that come up. And not both in the tribe and in the casino and with politics. So yeah, I mean, definitely writing is and reading has been so important. As I say to potential people who want to be lawyers, be an English major, read books, because what that does when you're in court, you can imagine different arguments. What's the English majors all
True.
about? The professor always says, do a thesis and back it up, right? On what the book means or what this meant. So it's perfect training in so many ways. A lot of the AI people now are wanting to hire humanities people because they have the imaginations and they can imagine kinds of scenarios and creating programs and so forth. It's interesting.
Was there a teacher or an elder or a mentor who helped you find your voice?
There was a teacher, like as I said, I didn't read a book till 11th grade. And there was a teacher, Mr. DeSoto, I can remember his name, who challenged me. I was kind of a rough and tumble kind of kid, lost in many ways. And he challenged me to read and understand and start to write. And he said, okay, tough guy, take it on. Take it. Let's see what you can do. And when you start studying, you're very alone. You're you're away from your friends and you're stuck with a light bulb. And I was trying to pick up the challenge and it was lonely, but starting to read, I got it reminded me of what I heard on the streets. It sounded like gossip to me, things you didn't know before about people. And
Right.
how I got so into literature and wanting to be a writer and a teacher. He helped me. The other person, of course, was Mabel McKay, the medicine woman, who I
Right.
had the fortune of knowing very young. And she had more wisdom in her little finger than all the professors at Stanford, where I was getting a PhD eventually.
What do you hope your tribe says about your leadership 50 years from now?
That he made the right decisions, that as a consequence of his work, we are in a place today where we had the opportunity to negotiate the difficulties we and all of the world had to face.
When you think about your life's work, what are you most proud of?
Um, I'm proud of many things, certainly my writing. I'm very proud of the writing and of the work I've done. But I can tell you what the things that make me most happy or proud or feel good about what I've done. And that is when I'm at the casino, everybody that works for us, we have nearly 3,000 people working for us, and every one of them gets the Kaiser Gold Cadillac plan, whereby they pay nothing out of their paycheck for full coverage, $10 deductible for brain surgery or aspirin. Clearly, I need the former. But, but speaking of time and being too busy, right? But when somebody recently, it happened again, a woman came up to me who was internal maintenance. She was cleaning the floor or something, and she called me aside as I was walking by, and she said, I just want to thank you for this job and for the benefits. And she said, the other night, my 2-year-old child had a very high fever, and at 2 in the morning, um, I was panicking, and I wanted to take her to the emergency room, And before this job, I wouldn't have had the money to put down an emergency room. And just to know that I could take her, and I took her to the emergency room and everything turned out fine and that I didn't have to worry. That makes
Oh,
me happy. That's
that's
that's the
so
thing.
huge. That's life
That
changing. I mean,
that is so
you're
huge.
touching more lives than you even realize.
And
Because
that's
I've been to your casino. I mean, as I work, I'm your makeup artist for some shoots
yes.
and for some of your employees. And I can honestly say that every time I walk in there, how happy everyone seems. And I've mentioned this to you before. Everyone that works there is happy to go to work every day. And you can't say that about a lot of companies. But I do notice that with you because everyone that I encounter, whether it be, the people in the restaurants or the, people in the casinos or in the bathrooms, everyone there has a smile on their face. And I think that's just such a beautiful thing.
Well, that was one of my goals. And when one of the other things I said when we decided to go the casino route, and I agreed with them, Christina, I to go that route. I said, oh, the other thing that's important to me is dignity in the workplace. And I was adamant about that. And we do great things. We anybody working with for us that has a green card, we walk them through, they and their families, and pay for their citizenship routes until they get their citizenship. Um, we have classes for folks to take, literacy classes, all those kinds of opportunities. And then when we have a saying, the only thing we don't tolerate is intolerance. So we have a very diverse population working for us, representing, of course, the larger Bay Area. Upwards of 20 different languages being spoken there. Transgender beverage servers and other transgender folks. I had to learn, for instance, I'm old, not to say cocktail. It's called beverage servers. They said,
Oh,
Chairman Sarris, I'm a beverage server, not a cocktail waiter or waitress. So,
oh,
okay,
okay. Good to know.
yeah, good to know. So, and we're really proud of that. And people feel safe and they feel happy there. And I would think that's one of the key ingredients to our success is that you just what you experience, Christina. You walk in there and people are happy. And if you go out somewhere, you go to a restaurant, don't you want, in addition to good food and so forth, don't you want people to be happy? You don't want to experience a grumpy waiter or
No,
wait.
definitely not.
Yeah,
So we're going to do some rapid fire questions. Are you ready?
I think so. Wait, a little bit of your
Get a sip
water.
of water, hydrate.
Oh, okay.
I know a lot of these answers, but not everyone else does. Coffee or tea?
Coffee.
Morning writer or late night writer?
Anytime I can, writer. Mostly though, more later day, later night. Yeah.
Where's your happy place?
In my home, in my garden.
Oh, mine too. What do you do when your day isn't flowing?
When my day isn't flowing, I go to the gym and work it out. And somehow I feel at least I've gotten something done.
I agree. That's a good one. What would people be surprised to know about you?
Um, that I'm shy and kind of an introvert.
You're
They,
like me. We're introverted extroverts.
there you go. I want to say it's performative, but it's really not because I'm really enjoying talking to you. And when I met you, I really enjoy engaging. And then I get lonely when I don't. And but I'm also like if I walk into a room and I don't know a lot of people, I'm not one that can just go up and start talking to everybody. I'm a little shy.
Yes, I have that same, I feel like that as well. And people think, I think because of the work that we do, that we're always on and super outgoing. And little do they know that we're kind of nerdy and be happiest reading our books and being in the garden,
Absolutely. You said
right?
the word. I am basically a nerd. I
You're
am
a hot
hap-
nerd.
yeah. Thank you. Yeah, but I'm happy reading a book, walking around the garden, walking in the trees, looking at the birds and things. And I guess when you're doing those things, you don't have any judgment, or you don't have to worry about, what people are thinking or saying, or what you have to say.
Right.
So
What is the book everyone should read besides your latest amazing book?
the book everybody should read probably would be, oh, this is so hard because it's like after I leave a class, I should have said this, but the book that comes to mind right away is 100 Years of Solitude by Gabriel Garcia Marquez. It's a
Hmm.
beautiful novel, and it's been inspirational to so many writers. Yeah.
Where is your favorite place in Sonoma County?
Um, my home, as I said. But the other thing I like, this is again, I'm revealing things. I grew up was to get out of the difficult home that I was in. I spent a lot of time on dairies, and I love looking at cows. So driving around Sonoma County, if there's dairy cows in the field, I'll pull off the road and just stand there and look at them.
Isn't it soothing and relaxing? I love
It's
that.
so it's so wonderful, and I have. This is the most bizarre thing. I don't think I've ever told anybody this. It's almost Zen-like for me to just stand there and look at
Absolutely.
the cows. I have this Zen-like experience where I'm elevated or free, or all the other crap that's in my mind goes.
Have you seen around um, all those like goats that they hire that are eating on the side of the road? Like I will stop and watch them because I find goats fascinating. They're
I
just like
had
these happy. You haven't seen those?
Oh, I've seen them. Don't worry, I stopped. But I had goats. In fact, for
So
a
did
while, I
I.
went through this dairy goats, and I actually showed some at the county fair. And to brag about my goats, I gave them to Redwood Hill Dairy, which is they have their yogurts and all that organic dairy. Um, Descendants. I mean, this must be great, 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 great granddaughters or whatever of a goat that I had named Water. Her descendants were ribbon famous goats on this dairy. She was a French Alpine goat.
So on a separate funny goat story, I lived in Mill Valley for 25 years, and we had this huge property with all this, grass and everything. And someone said, "Oh, you need to get some goats." So I went up to Petaluma to that auction place,
Oh
and I
wow,
came,
yes, I know right where that is. I
yeah,
pass it
right
and
on
look
the
to see
freeway,
what's in
right?
there. Yes,
So
yeah.
I went there, and I came home with 6 baby goats that needed to be bottle fed.
Oh my God.
Yes. And so we had these goats, and we finally they were around for quite a long time, and they ate everything, and they were the best. We had this one goat, Tucker, and he was so funny because he thought he was a Labrador, so he would go in the doghouse with my two black labs and
Yeah.
just be with them. Goats are really intelligent animals.
They're a lot like dogs. I mean, they become great pets, and also
Yes.
they can jump over fences. They're clever. They can get out of
Oh
things
yes.
very. But you have to watch out now because up by my house out there on Sonoma Mountain, there's cougars, and cougars go after goats.
Oh.
And in fact, my friends, Carol and Mickey Hart, they just recently had two of their goats eaten by a cougar up
Oh.
by Occidental up there. Yeah.
Most underrated quality in a leader.
Um, sensitivity,
Hmm.
sensitivity, and um, I think humility, humility.
How important is self-care? And what are your
Really,
favorite things for self-care? I'm
really,
judging you right now.
yes, of course, yeah. You set me up for this one. Um, Self-care is so important. I always feel, just like with work, I'm never doing enough. I feel with healthcare, I'm never doing enough. And I really try to watch it. I try to watch what I eat. I try to drink enough water. I try not to drink so much coffee. And I try to get to the gym every day, or at least 5 to 6 days a week, and
That's
work
so good.
out. And I've never had any facial work or anything like that. but I do go and get a facial now and then. And I'm 74 years old, so
You're
I
amazing.
just keep going. But I think it's really important. I don't smoke or drink or anything. I might have a shot of mezcal now and then, but
Every
short of
now and
that.
again. If you weren't a writer or the chairman, what would you be?
I always, here we go. I always dreamed it wouldn't work now because it's so difficult, but I always dreamed I always wanted to be a dairyman and have cows.
That is so funny. I think my fondest memories of my childhood are when I was in 4-H and going to Sonoma County Fair with my cousins, and they raised cattle, and we would just be sitting there I can just still see it, in these stalls with the cows, just sitting there playing cards, and it was so fun.
And the hay is there, and you're sitting in the hay.
Yes,
I've been
yes.
there. I showed my cows there. I
Oh my
had a Jersey
gosh.
heifer when I was a kid. Her name was Sally. I still remember the
Oh,
name of her mother and her grandmother. Sally came from Spray, and Spray came from Spring.
I love that. What's your favorite way to spend a free afternoon? Not that you ever have very many.
Sitting along the Russian River, watching the river flow.
So fun. I go up there often with my sister and my brother-in-law, and we paddle down the river. You're gonna have to
Isn't
join us
that
sometime.
isn't that great? Yes.
So
Yeah.
soothing. It's so amazing. What does being too busy mean to you?
Not having enough time for friends and family.
All right.
Um, Something's got to give. And when you're really busy, what you sacrifice are time, more time with friends and family. Um, and so I think that's one of the things. The other thing that being too busy means that you're constantly, as you will know, and this is, I'm curious what other people say, but you're constantly in a state of, I've got to do this, I've got to do that, that's got to get done. Where am I going to fit this in? I'll fit this in over here, I'll fit this in over there. You're constantly organizing your life by the minute.
Right. Yeah, that's hard. What have I not asked you today that you'd like to share? Because I have so many more questions and I know we're running out of time, but what have I not asked you that you want to share today?
Um, Well, I can. You put me on the spot again. How much I really enjoyed meeting you and having you do
Oh,
my face and getting dressed up for the opening night celebration.
how
And
fun
that
was
was
that?
so much fun. And that's what's really, really cool is meeting people you connect with right away. Because, in our
Right,
world, we meet a lot of people.
right.
And sometimes you're nice because you're on, as we said earlier. But then sometimes you really feel like you connect with people and they're really cool. And
Yes, I think that's the gift with purchase of both our jobs is getting the opportunity to meet different people. And I have to say for myself, I've enjoyed working with you. And it was really a thrill to be walking down the red carpet with you that opening night in my very fancy gown. And it was so much fun and just to see to be standing there with you looking at all you accomplished because when we had done our first shoot together the project wasn't done yet and
no,
you showed me everything and you said oh like in a month this is going to be done and I just was like oh my gosh like how is all of this going to get done in a month and it was and
uh,
you should be so proud because it is so incredibly beautiful there and tastefully done. It doesn't feel like what people think a casino is. It is a very
yeah.
elegant, beautiful place. So I just want you to know how much you mean to me and all the beautiful things that you've done and accomplished. I hope you realize how extraordinary you are.
Oh, well, now you're gonna make me blush and say it's all not true. I'm an imposter. Um, the truth, Christina, if you and I were to sit down and you hadn't met me before, and I told you, oh, I write books and I'm a tribal chairman and a businessman and a professor and I have a PhD from Stanford, the first thing you would be doing is looking for the door to get away from this. Who is this crazy kook? But it's all true. It's in Los Angeles, as you know, nobody asks you how you are. They ask you what you do. And I
That's
would
true.
always say, I would always say, well, I'm a professor, a writer, a novelist, a screenwriter, and an Indian chief. What are you? And of course, everybody would laugh, ha ha, they think it was a joke.
They,
But
yeah,
as
they
you
didn't
know,
believe
it's
any of
all
those things.
it's true. But yeah, that night was wonderful. And I remember when we first went there, you weren't the only one that was concerned about it getting done in a month. Because when we walked around there, there was bare walls and concrete.
Oh,
There wasn't carpet.
definitely
And remember, I
nothing.
was saying, Christina, watch your step. There's nails on the floor and everything else. Um, but miraculously, it got done. And I guess one of the things I'd always believed, and it proves true, that if you do good, you'll get good.
Oh, I love that. Greg, I can't thank you enough. I know you're so busy. I'm so honored to have you on the show today. And I thank you and everyone at Grayton for all the amazing things that you do. And I look forward to seeing you again very soon. I'm
I
Christina
love
Flach,
this,
and I'm too
Christina,
busy.
because I love you. It's so great working with you.
Oh,
Call me up. Find some excuse to do this again. I'll fit it in my busy schedule anytime.
okay, goody. We're going to do part two. I love it.